I was still in my bathrobe when Maddie's truck turned into my driveway at 6:45 on the morning of my son's wedding. It wasn't until I saw her face through the windshield that I understood. The day was not going to go the way any of us had planned. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Before we go any further, drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from. I read every single one, and if this story speaks to you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Just a quick note. This narrative includes some creative elements added for storytelling and teaching purposes. Any resemblance to real people or places is purely coincidental, but the lessons inside it, those are as real as anything I've ever lived through. Now, let me tell you what happened. Maddie had worked in our home for 22 years. She was there when my children were small, there when my husband got sick, there the morning after the funeral when I couldn't figure out how to make the coffee because he had always been the one who made the coffee. She knew every squeaky floorboard in this house and every unspoken rule of how we lived in it. In 22 years, she had never once arrived uninvited. She knocked twice, soft, quick, the kind of knock that doesn't want to be heard from upstairs. I opened the door before the second knock had finished. "You need to come with me." She kept her voice low, barely above a whisper. "Right now, before Brody comes downstairs." "Maddie, what in the world?" "There's something you have to see." She took my arm gently, but with purpose, the way she used to steady me in the months after my husband died. "I spent 6 weeks making sure I wasn't wrong. I'm not wrong. And if you don't come with me right now, your son is going to walk into something that will hollow him out." She said one more thing. She said that my husband had trusted her to look after this family, that she was asking me to let her do that now. My husband had been gone 4 years. I still heard his voice in quiet rooms sometimes, still turned to say something to him in the evenings before I remembered. He would have known what to do in this moment. He always knew. I grabbed my purse off the hook by the door and followed her to the truck. She had an old extended cab, the kind with a back seat that folds down flat. She asked me to get in and cover myself with the blanket she kept folded back there, the heavy wool one she used for tailgate sales in the fall. She needed to come back around front and wait for Brody to leave first. He couldn't see me. "I feel like I've gone completely out of my mind," I said, pulling the blanket over my legs. "I wish that's all it was," she said. Brody came out at 7:15. I heard the front door, heard his voice. Easy, bright. The voice of a man who believes the best day of his life is about 10 hours away. He said something to his best friend Davis, who had stayed over the night before, and laughed at whatever Davis said back. Then his footsteps crossed the driveway toward his car. I pressed my hand over my mouth and held still. His phone rang. Speakerphone. He always drives on speakerphone. I have told him 100 times it's a bad habit. Jenna's voice filled the air, warm and clear. "Good morning, handsome. Just checking in before the chaos starts." "Hey, you." Brody's voice went soft the way it always did when he talked to her. "I'm already heading out. Are you nervous?" "I'm nervous." "You're going to be fine," she said. Then, "Your mother's not with you, is she?" "No, she went early to check on the flowers at the venue. You know how she is." There was a small pause. "Good," Jenna said. "That's perfect. I just wanted it to be about us today. Just us." It sounded like the right thing to say. It was the right thing to say. I lay under that blanket and turned the word perfect over in my mind and tried to understand why it felt wrong. Brody's phone buzzed, an incoming call trying to cut through. He switched over, there was a silence, and then his voice changed. Quieter, controlled, the voice of someone who does not want to be overheard. "I told you not to call this number again," he said. "One day, it is one day. I told you it will be handled after. Stop calling me." He hung up. The car was quiet for a moment. I heard him exhale, then the sound of his engine, and he was gone. I lay in the back of that truck and thought about the way his voice had gone flat, the way the fear had bled through underneath the control. My son was frightened of something, and he thought marrying Jenna was going to make it stop. Maddie drove me to a part of town I didn't know well. The houses were modest, the lawns a little tired, the kind of neighborhood where people are working hard and don't have much left over for appearances. She parked 2 houses down from a white bungalow and told me to sit up. "The name on the mailbox is Haverford," she said. "The man's name is Clay. He and Jenna share utility accounts, a bank account, and have for 4 years." She paused. "Watch the side door, not the front, the side." I watched. At 7:48, the side door opened. Jenna stepped out. She was wearing jeans and a loose shirt, hair pulled back with a rubber band. No polish, no performance, just a woman in her own home moving through her morning. I had never seen her look so comfortable in her own skin. In 2 years of dinners and holidays and careful, watchful conversations, I had never seen her look like this. And then a little girl burst through the door behind her. 4 years old, maybe just turned 5, dark curls, red sneakers, both arms reaching upward. "Mama, wait!" The word reached me like cold water poured straight down my spine. Jenna turned and caught the child without thinking, the way you catch someone you've been catching for years. She pressed her face briefly into those dark curls. Then she set the little girl down and crouched to eye level. And I watched her say something low and serious. The child listened with a small, serious face, then nodded. A man appeared in the doorway, late 30s, worn out around the eyes in the particular way of people who are carrying something they didn't agree to carry. He stood with his hands in his pockets and looked at Jenna the way you look at a plan you made when you had no other options and are only now counting the full cost. "Kessler called again," he said. "His name was Clay, according to Maddie, Clay Haverford." I know. Jenna's voice had no warmth in it. This was a different woman than the one who sat at my dinner table. "He said if it's not paid by Monday." "Clay, flat and final. I need to be at the venue in 2 hours. We don't have time." "He seems like a decent man," Clay said. He was looking at his shoes. "You're the one you're marrying. He seems like he doesn't deserve this." "He doesn't," Jenna said. Matter of fact, like she was reading a weather report. "That's not the point." Clay looked at the little girl, who had drifted toward the driveway and was spinning in slow circles with her arms out, watching the sky. "1 year," he said, like a prayer, like a reminder. "1 year," Jenna confirmed. "Joint accounts, access to the estate, and we pay Kessler everything and disappear. Lila grows up safe. We start over somewhere he'll never find us." She stepped toward Clay and she kissed him. Not the polite, performative kind I'd seen her give my son at family events, but a real kiss. The kind that has history in it. "Trust me," I heard her say against his cheek. Then she walked to her car, backed out, and was gone. I sat in that truck for a long moment without moving. Then Maddie looked at me in the rearview mirror and said, "Go knock on his door. I think he's been waiting for someone to." Before I tell you what happened next, I need to stop and ask, are you with me? Leave a comment right now and let me know where you're listening from. Because what comes next is what changed everything. Clay opened the door on the second knock. He looked at my face, and I watched him understand immediately who I was. He stepped back without a word and let me in. The living room was small and honest, mismatched furniture, a child's drawings taped in overlapping layers across one entire wall, a basket of small shoes by the door. On the kitchen table sat a manila envelope. He had prepared it in advance, or maybe had never put it away, because he walked straight to it and laid the contents out, without my having to ask. Their marriage certificate, 3 years old. A birth certificate for Lila Rose Haverford, age 4. Bank statements with both their names. And printed text messages, highlighted in yellow. Jenna's words, to a number Clay, identified as a burner phone she'd used for planning. The family's holdings are substantial: hotels, real estate, investment portfolios. "Once I have joint access, we can clear everything and then some. And he's lonely, grieving." The timing is ideal, and I hate that I know that. And stop second-guessing. Kessler doesn't feel guilty. Neither can we. I read each one. My hands stayed steady because I told them to. Clay sat down across from me and told me the rest. The premature birth, the stacking medical bills, the bad investments trying to dig out, the loan from a man named Kessler, who turned out not to be the kind of lender who works on gentlemen's agreements. Kessler had told them 3 months ago that if his money wasn't cleared by year's end, he'd take Lila. Not a metaphor. I looked at the little girl who had come back inside and was now kneeling on the floor arranging toy horses in a very specific order, humming something low and tuneless and utterly content. She doesn't know, I said. No, Clay said, she doesn't know any of it. I stood up. Bring the envelope. I need you to come to the church. His face went white. Kessler may have people. So will I said. I had Maddie in the truck and 22 years of loyalty and the knowledge that the truth was already out of the box and could not go back in. My son needs to hear this before he says I do. And you are the only person in that building who can make him believe it, because you have that envelope and because you are the living proof. I paused. And your daughter deserves a father who did the right thing when it mattered. Give her that. Clay looked at Lila. She had arranged all the horses in a perfect circle and was standing back to admire them with her arms crossed, satisfied. I'll be there, he said. There is a question I know you are asking, because it is the right question. Why didn't you tell him privately? Why put him through that in front of everyone? I tried. 2 nights before the wedding, I sat Brody down at the kitchen table after dinner, and I said, I need to talk to you about Jenna. Something is wrong. I've been watching things that don't add up, and I cannot go into this weekend without telling you. He looked at me with patience so worn thin it had started to look like grief. Mom, he said, we have been through this. You have been finding reasons to worry about Jenna for 2 years. She is not going anywhere. I love her. Please let me have this. I backed down. I had no proof yet. Only Maddie's account and some photographs on a phone. I had already been wrong about my instincts enough times in the last 4 years that I no longer fully trusted them. And the look on his face, that particular look that meant he was already bracing for me to take something good away from him, stopped me. But I told myself, if Maddie confirmed it, if there was real documentation, I would not stay silent to save anyone's feelings, not even my son's, not even my own. I walked into that church, prepared for him to never forgive me. The ceremony was everything it should have been. Flowers banked along the aisle, light through old stained glass, painting the marble floor in colors. Brody, at the altar, looking so much like his father on our own wedding day that I had to breathe very carefully for a moment before I could look at him directly. Jenna came down the aisle like a vision. She was extraordinary at the performance of it. 2 years of practice, of patience, of inhabiting the character so completely that not one person in that building doubted her. I watched her walk toward my son, and I thought, she is very, very good at being someone she is not. The Reverend reached the moment. If anyone here has cause to believe these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. I stood. The fabric of my dress rustling in that silence was the loudest sound I have ever made in my life. Every head turned. I object. My voice came out clear and steady. I am still not certain how. The cathedral erupted around me. Gasps, chairs scraping, whispers cascading from the front pews to the back. Brody turned from the altar with a look on his face that I will spend the rest of my life carrying confusion and underneath it, the beginning of something breaking that could not be unbroken. Mom, his voice cracked, what are you doing? I walked toward the altar, deliberately, my heels on that marble floor. I'm so sorry, I said to the room, to everyone there in their finest clothes and their best intentions. I am deeply sorry, but this ceremony cannot go forward. Jenna's composure cracked. Not all at once. more like a pane of glass that fractures along invisible lines before it falls. "You would really do this," she said. "You would do this to your own son." "The woman standing at this altar," I said, loud enough for the room to hear, "is already married." I have never heard a silence like the one that followed. It moved through that cathedral like something physical. Brody's voice, when it came, barely sounded like his. That's not possible. We've been together 2 years. I know her." "Her legal name is Jenna Haverford," I said. "She has been married to a man named Clay Haverford for 3 years. They have a daughter together, a 4-year-old girl named Lila." From the back of the cathedral, footsteps. Clay walked down the center aisle with Lila's hand in his, and the manila envelope tucked under his other arm. He walked slowly, with the weight of a man who has done a wrong thing, and is, at considerable cost, now trying to do a right one. Lila looked around at the flowers with enormous interested eyes. "Daddy," she said, at a perfectly ordinary volume, "that lady's dress is the biggest dress I've ever seen." Someone near the back made a sound that was almost a laugh. Clay stopped at the foot of the altar steps. He looked at Brody with something genuine in his face, guilt, and something close to grief for a man he'd never met. "My name is Clay Haverford," he said. "Jenna is my wife. I have our marriage certificate and our daughter's birth certificate and documentation of the plan she put in place to access your family's accounts to pay off a debt." He held out the envelope. "You're a good man. You deserve to know." Brody did not move. He stood at that altar in his wedding suit, and I've watched the last 2 years rearrange themselves behind his eyes. Everything he had felt, everything she had said, every moment he had replayed in his mind to reassure himself, reorganizing into a different shape. Then he turned to Jenna. "Tell me he's lying." His voice was very quiet. "Look at me and say the words. Tell me he's lying." Jenna opened her mouth, looked at Lila, who was studying the stained glass, without any idea what was happening around her. Looked at Brody. No words came. The silence lasted 11 seconds, I counted. Then she sank to her knees at the altar steps, and the bouquet fell from her hands, and white flowers scattered across the marble. The tears were real, I think. Not for my son, but for herself, for the plan she had built so carefully now dissolving in a church full of witnesses. "I didn't have a choice," she said. "You don't understand what this man threatened, what we owe him." "There is always a choice," I said, quietly. "Not with cruelty, just with the simple finality of something that is simply true." 2 police officers came in through the cathedral doors. Maddie had called ahead from the parking lot while I was inside Clay's house. They walked down the center aisle without urgency, the way people walk when they have seen most things and not easily rattled. "Jenna Haverford." The lead officer's voice was matter of fact. "You're under arrest for marriage fraud and bigamy. You have the right to remain silent." Lila's face crumpled when she saw the handcuffs. She made a small, frightened sound. Clay swept her up immediately, turning her face into his shoulder, one hand pressed against the back of her curls. "It's okay, baby," he said. "Daddy's right here. I've got you." Jenna, hands behind her back, looked at Brody one final time as the officers guided her toward the doors. She said his name. "My name," he said, "is Brody, flat, final, a door closing." The cathedral doors shut behind her, with a sound like a period at the end of a very long sentence. We sat in the front pew after everyone else had gone. Just the 2 of us, the way we'd sat in so many waiting rooms and hospital corridors over the past 4 years. The light moved through the stained glass and changed colors slowly across the floor. "I would have believed her over you," Brody said finally. "If you'd come to me before today, I would have." "I know," I said. "I almost did anyway. Even standing there, I kept waiting for it to not be real. That's what love looks like when it's genuine. The fact that you gave her that is not something to be ashamed of." He was quiet for a while. Was any of it real, even a moment? I thought about that carefully. I had watched Jenna in quiet moments. Moments she couldn't have known anyone was noticing. There had been times she looked at my son with something that didn't seem like performance. I think it's possible to do a terrible thing to someone and still feel something for them. I think that might be one of the most painful truths about people. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe some of it, but it doesn't change what she chose. He nodded slowly. What happens to the little girl? Clay is getting full custody. My attorney is helping him through the process. Lila had nothing to do with any of this, and she deserves a stable home. I paused. And as it turns out, her father is a good man who made bad decisions under tremendous pressure. She's going to be all right. Brody leaned back against the pew and closed his eyes. The phone calls, he said quietly. The unknown number. That was Clay, wasn't it? Calling because he was having second thoughts. Yes. He let out a long breath. Part of me almost answered the third time. Part of you knew. We sat with that for a while. What do I do now? He asked. You let people who love you help you. You talk to someone. A good therapist. Not just Davis telling you she wasn't worth it. You take time. You don't rush any of it. I looked at him. And you come to Sunday dinners. Maddie has been carrying this secret for 6 weeks, and I think it's been destroying her cooking. She needs to be back in a real kitchen, making a real pot roast, and frankly, so do I. He made a sound that was almost a laugh. We stayed until the light shifted all the way across the floor, and the cathedral went quiet around us. 4 months later, I was in my office on a Tuesday with the window open when Brody walked in carrying a folder of contracts for a property expansion we'd been working on together. He looked better. Not healed. Healing is not a destination. It is a direction. But he was sleeping through the nights. He had a therapist he respected. He was working. And he was present in the work in a way he hadn't been in years. He set the folder on my desk and then didn't immediately leave, the way he might have 6 months ago. He sat down. The sentencing came through, he said. 4 years. She'll serve at least 2. I nodded. And Kessler was picked up on federal charges. He's not getting out for a long time. He paused. Clay sent me a message. He and Lila moved to Asheville. She started kindergarten. Apparently, she told her whole class she once went to a wedding that didn't have a wedding in it. I pressed my fingers to my eyes briefly. God bless that child. He thanked me, Brody said, for helping with his legal costs. He said he's trying to raise her to know that doing the right thing is worth it even when it costs you something. He was quiet a moment. I told him I had a pretty good example of that. He stood, picked up the folder, and paused at the door. Mom. I looked up. Thank you for standing up, he said it simply. No ceremony around it. Just the truth between 2 people who had been through something hard and were still standing. I know what it cost you, to risk me hating you for it. You're my son, I said. There was never a real decision to make. He nodded once and went back to work. I sat alone in my office with the window open, and, on my desk, a photograph of my husband and me on the morning of Brody's college graduation. My husband's hand on his shoulder, both of them laughing at something I no longer remember. Whatever it was, it must have been worth it. We did all right, I said to the photograph. He smiled back at me the way he always does, patient, certain. The way he always looked when he already knew how something was going to turn out. Proverbs 19:21 says, Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Jenna planned for 18 months. She researched and prepared and built a character so carefully that almost no one saw through it. And in the end, the truth didn't need permission. It only needed someone willing to stand up and say it out loud. If you are sitting with that feeling right now, the quiet, persistent wrongness you keep talking yourself out of, I hope this reaches you. Trust what you know. Not everything that looks like love is love. And sometimes the most courageous thing you can do for the people you love is risk their anger to save them from something worse. One painful moment of truth will always be better than a lifetime shaped by a lie. If this story moved you, please hit subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave me a comment. Have you ever had to make a hard choice to protect someone you love? I want to hear your story. God bless you, and thank you for staying with me until the end.